So our BEP in units will be, you say total fixed cost divided by the contribution, isn't it? Right? What's the total fixed cost? 72,000. We divide by our contribution. We've gotten our contribution as 120,000. What does that give us?
0.6.
0.6.
Yes.
That's the most common wrong answer. What did I say about contribution? I said it is contribution per unit. What you are giving me is the total contribution. So the most common wrong answer will be the student giving me fixed cost over total contribution. Maybe to make your formula a bit easier, you can talk of the formula is total fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. Just write per unit to be safe. Because you can see we are already making a mistake. So what is the contribution per unit? How many units are we producing?
10,000.
So 120,000 divided by 10,000?
12.
12.
12.
So I should divide by 12 instead, right?
Yes.
So what do you get?
6,000.
6,000.
6,000.
Yes.
Yes.
6,000 what?
Units.
Yeah, 6,000 units.
Excuse
So,
me.
yes.
Oh, I'm lost in between there.
You lost. You don't say in between. That is vague. Why are you lost? Be specific.
Yes.
Be specific. You cannot be lost in between. Why are you lost?
On where we are getting the 6,000 units.
You said we get the contribution per unit, not the total contribution. What is the total contribution? I'm asking you, what's the total contribution?
120,000.
And then how many? How many units did we produce?
10,000.
So what is 120,000 divided by 10,000?
Oh, 12.
You are now found.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we talk of, kindly know that it is contribution per unit and not total contribution. So can we get the BEP in shillings? We are just multiplying our units into unit cost. So it will be 6,000 multiplied by, what is the cost per unit?
40.
40.
So we are getting, our BEP is 24 or 240.
240. 4,000.
So it is 240. So we are getting our, at 240,000, we should be able now to break even. So can we get the margin of safety? What is our MOS? I said margin of safety is the actual profit minus, I said if you are not talking, mute yourself.
BEP.
BEP.
Actual profits minus BEP. So our margin of safety is the actual profit that we've gotten is, we are talking of the gross profit. So the actual profit that you've gotten is 280. 280. Then we minus the BEP. Our BEP is 240,000. So we are able to get 40. So our margin of safety will be 40,000. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Excuse me, sir.
Hmm.
So sasa hiyo
Speak
total
English.
marginal cost. Okay.
Speak English to the class.
It's okay. It's okay. So the total marginal cost is the one that we are using as the profit, the
Yes,
actual profit, not 48.
That is the actual profit. I've said contribution. If you remember my explanation, contribution is trying to get now whether our total profit will be able to absorb the fixed cost fully and still remain profitable. You get?
Yes.
So it's like the contribution. What contribution is our gross profit? This figure here. I don't want to mix you. At this point, just know that it's contribution. This is our expected, not contribution. Our total marginal cost. Am I even saying the right thing? We are confused. Our total marginal cost is, let me take you back to the, a bit confusing. Let me go back to the diagram I was illustrating. A minute. So this is the diagram. Let me go to the second diagram. Not even the second. I have another diagram, the third one, to explain this. Now, I'm coming from this point because I don't want to confuse you. I'm coming from this point, right? BEP is where our sales are equal to the total cost, right? So I'm concerned with my profit area. The objective of any business is to maximize profit, right? So I'm looking at what shall I do to remain profitable. I don't want, no manager will want to go below the break-even point. So if I take you to the next diagram now, picking from the profit area. So this is my profit area, this zone. So picking my profit area, if these are now the margins of safety. So the B2, this is my normal curve, right? So this is the BEP. This point is the BEP. So I want a situation where my margin of safety will decrease so that I report more profit. If I go below the break-even point, so you can see what is happening. My margin of safety is expanding. In other words, I'm saying I'm more risky. My actual, we've said the BEP is the actual profit or what the manager anticipates minus the BEP point. If your margin of safety is more, then it means that the business is risky. And that's why I'm saying any manager should aspire to be on this side. Let me go back. To be on this side of the curve. Any manager will aspire to remain on this side. You'd rather not even produce an extra coin if you know that it will take you to the loss zone. So our margin of safety is the gap between BEP and the actual profit, right? So if I was to, what you call interpolate, if I was, for example, to draw a line here, touching my x-axis, the difference between this point and the break-even point is my margin of safety. I think it is now clear, right?
Yes.
The actual, I less the BEP. This point here is what I'm calling the margin of safety. Well, we'll be doing that in details in the management accounting when we'll be doing the CVP or the decision-making criteria in business. So that shouldn't worry you. Now, the assumptions that have been drawn to come up with the break-even analysis or the CVP analysis. CVP is cost versus volume, then profit. So when I talk of the CVP or the BVP, I can put here in bracket. In management accounting, we call it CVP, but we call it break-even analysis at this level. But CVP is, we are looking at the cost, the volume of activity to report profit. So if I increase the volume of activity, I expect my profit to go up. And this is what I'm explaining down here, that my volume of activity will either increase or decrease my margin of safety. It's even further explained here. Don't want us to go to that point. There is a way you can play around with the product mix to ensure that you are shifting your BEP in totality. So you can see what is happening. Our sales volume can easily be played about by the manager to ensure that the product mix that you are producing and taking to the market there always make us remain profitable. I don't want to go there at this point. You just need to know what is BEP, what is contribution, what is margin of safety. I'll be coming to CS ratio or to see how our contribution is making our sales either to be profitable or not profitable. So allow me to avoid what is not important at this level. So I've said we come up with this analysis by holding some factors constant or other assumptions. The first one is the break-even chart is fundamentally a static analysis. So changes can only be shown by drawing a new chart or a series of charts. So for it to hold, we are assuming that it is a static point, which is not true. Of course, we know that the movement or the price levels will be affected by the forces of demand and supply, isn't it? So if we were to follow the fundamentals of economics, we can argue or we can critique the first assumption, but the assumption has been put there for the graph to hold. Secondly, relevant range is specified to define fixed and variable cost in relation to a specific period and designated range of production level. Again, we are ignoring the basic cost behavior. Even at some point, we know that the variable cost can behave like step cost. You remember? But we are assuming that fact for the relevant range to stay. That's why I'm calling them assumptions. Thirdly, all costs fall into either fixed or variable cost classification. So we are broadly categorizing our costs in either fixed or variable. But we know they are all manner of cost. We have semi-variable, we have incremental, we have sunk cost, right? But we are assuming for the curve or for the graph to hold, fixed cost and variable cost are the only cost. Again, we are ignoring all the other cost behaviors. Then 4, unit variable costs remain the same. And there is a direct relationship between cost and volume. So we are holding the unit variable cost constant. So in this case here, we are violating the, what you call you see the pricing of commodities. We don't dictate. They are pushed by the forces of demand and supply. So when you go to the market, you cannot assume that your unit variable cost will remain constant. It will not change. But if all your competitors are selling at a lower cost, and assuming you are selling perishable goods, let's say tomatoes, you have to be pushed by the forces. But in this case, we are assuming that our variable costs are constant. They are not changing. Then 5, volume is assumed to be the only important factor affecting the cost behavior. That's why we are calling it CVP, cost volume profit analysis. So we are only playing around with the x-axis, where if, for instance, our volume of activity is machine hours, we expect that if we increase the machine hours, we are going to produce more. Maybe we are increasing machine hours because the machine had broken down, isn't it? So we are assuming all the other factors. We are just playing around with the level of activity or the volume of activity. That's why it's CVP. Then unit sales and other market conditions are assumed to remain unchanged. Again, we are ignoring the market. Then total fixed cost remain constant over the relevant range that is considered. Again, we are holding that constant, which is not true. Then inventory changes are so insignificant that they have no impact on the analysis. Yeah, again, we are assuming that our inventory is not affecting the profits that we are producing. Suppose we stop adding stock. Are we going to remain profitable? No. Then lastly, the technology level does not change. So we are assuming whatever we started with, the efficiency is the same, technology is the same, we are not advancing, etc. But the reason why we hold all these assumptions constant is for the argument to stay. If we alter one, and that's why I'm saying we are going to go to in-depth analysis when we come to management accounting, information for making decision. We'll be trying to argue out and modify some of the CVP assumptions for the manager to be able to make a precise and concise decision. So we have a second example. Can you look at the portal? Go to the portal. There's another example I've given there of Ruiro Mabati. Are you there? Had you closed your portals? The last time I checked, they were open. But if you remain quiet, how am I supposed to know? So we've been told Ruiro Mabati Limited produces iron sheets. In the year 2014, 10,000 iron sheets bundles were produced, but only 90,000 of them were sold. There were no opening and closing stock of work in progress. So we've been given the cost, the particular cost, direct materials 28,000, labor 8,000, production overhead 10,000. This totals to 46. We are also informed that 60% of production overheads are fixed. The iron sheets are normally sold in bundles of 19 sheets. The average selling price of each bundle. How is that? Gaetano.
Yes.
This is a class. If you are not talking, kindly mute. Thank you. So we've been told that 60% of the production overheads are fixed. The iron sheets are normally sold in bundles of 19 sheets. The average selling price of each bundle was 600 shillings. Selling and administrative expenses for the year amounted to 3 million, of which 1.2 million were fixed. You are required to give the P&L on marginal costing basis. We no longer use P&L. It is old school. So whenever you see P&L, you are being asked about the statement of comprehensive income, or rather the income statement, and then calculate the BEP in units and shillings. Then we've been told, suppose the company want to make profit of 6.3 million. Find out the level of output in units. You can see now the margin of safety is being put into play, where an expectation is being put for you to see whether you're going to report a profit or you need to increase the number of outputs to get to that particular point. So how do we start? We need to prepare the...
Excuse me, does that question has some problems? Because we are told 10,000 were produced. How do we produce 10,000 and then sell 90,000?
You have been told?
The question is saying, Ruiru Mabati Limited produces iron sheets. In 2014, 10,000 iron sheets were produced, but only 90,000 were sold. Is that
could
correct?
be, we can change to 100,000. I think there is a problem.
Yes.
Just change it to 100.
Okay.
I think it's an error of omission. Yeah, change the iron sheets to 100,000. Good for noting that. So can we do the, I have my, this will be easier for me because I have the sketch here. I just delete everything. So what were the sales? We are selling 90. What is the cost per unit? I give you some time to read the question.
600, I think.
600.
600.
Yes.
So this will give us 9 times 6 is 54. Are you getting 54 million?
54, yes.
I can decrease this. Those are so many zeros. Let me just write it in 30, like an accounting student, and omit the 3. That's better. We go to the marginal cost. What's the cost of materials? We've been given compound cost, isn't it? 28,000. Was 28,000. Then the cost of labor?
8,000.
Then the cost of, been given the cost of overheads?
Yes. 10,000.
10,000. Is an additional information of 60% or something.
Excuse me, Molimo.
Yes.
The cost per unit you've written as 600. Yet 600 is the cost per bundle. We should divide 600 by 19 to get the cost per unit.
You think so?
That's what I think so, because bundle is 19 pieces.
That will complicate my question. Then I should instead question. How did I get this question? But you've been told 100,000 iron sheet bundles. Look at the question.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at this additional information. You are also informed that 60% of the production overheads are fixed. So the production overheads that you've been given are total or fixed and variable. So what is variable in that 10,000?
6,000.
6,000. 6,000 or 4,000? 6,000 will be fixed.
6, it's fixed, then 4.
So 4,000, right? And indicate here 40%. 40% of 10,000. So that will give me 6,000. So can you get the total marginal cost? What are you getting? Yes.
Forty percent of 10,000 should be 4,000.
4,000. Correct. So 40 is 14,000. You're getting 14,000. Right? Those are contribution.
Is it 14 or 40,000?
Yes.
The total marginal cost.
Oh, it's 40,000. This is supposed to be
40,000.
contribution. 40.
40.
So can we get the, I'm looking at this contribution. Look at that contribution. Is that our gross contribution? The 14,000?
Variable cost.
Look at the question. What is our fixed overheads? It's 4,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
4,000 or 6,000?
Fixed is 6,000.
Fixed, it's 6,000. 4 is
6,000.
variable.
Yeah.
So what will be the finished goods, the closing stock of finished goods? We haven't sold, we are selling 90. That's why I'm asking whether it is the actual contribution. Though we are producing 100,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we are selling 90. So we need to less the closing stock of finished goods. In this contribution, we have some money that ought not to be there. True or false? This is not the contribution.
Yeah.
Actually, let me even rub confusing us. So we are supposed to less the closing stock for us to be able to get the gross contribution, isn't it? Because we have closing stock. In the earlier example, we didn't have closing stock. So let's closing stock. What is my figure for closing stock? Closing stock.
I think there are no opening and closing stock.
But I have the closing stock of the finished goods. You see what we are talking about is for the previous period. For this particular period, we have closing stock. We are selling 90. We are producing 100. Inequally.
Now closing stock should be 10,000.
What is the cost?
Closing stock should be 10,000.
10,000 is in units. I want cost. Can't you
600.
see we prepare a statement using money.
10,000 times
6, you get 6 million.
You see what we haven't sold. You cannot talk of the cost being 600, guys. We haven't sold. Could be we are going even to sell at 800 shillings. I want you to think like cost accounting students. Think like managers. I want you to think like managers.
Is it 6 million?
Where are you getting 6 million from? I need
think
cost
I'm
per
doing
unit. I need cost per unit. I'll do the multiplication. Give me cost per unit. So that you tell us where you are getting it from.
It should be 600.
600 is selling price. What's the marginal cost of producing 100,000 bundles? The marginal cost of producing 1,000 bundles you've gotten is 40,000, isn't it? Right? So we can say 100,000 is equivalent to 40,000. Then we ask ourselves, what is the marginal cost per unit? What will be the marginal cost per unit? What is 100,000 divided by this? And this is 40 million actually, isn't it? Not even 40,000. This should be 40M. 40M divided by 100,000, you are going to get
40 million.
400. So this is the cost per unit.
200.
You see, you're working with the 600. Our marginal cost doesn't have the fixed cost. That's why we are talking of the 40%, isn't it? And because we are preparing our income statement using the marginal cost, then you are going to eliminate that aspect of fixed cost, right? So our closing stock are 10,000.
10,000.
10,000 units. You are going to multiply by 4,000. Not 4,000, 400. What are you going to get?
4 million.
4 million.
4 million.
How do I write 4 million? 4,000, right?
4,000.
So can we get now the gross contribution? So you can see where we have the closing stock. You got to think like a manager. So our gross contribution will be $36, right? Our gross contribution is 36. So what will be our contribution? What is the figure that we'll be using to calculate the BEP? Contribution will be now go back to the formula. Sales equals to sales minus. Now we are going to minus this, isn't it? So our contribution is 18,000. If you minus 40,000, you are going to eliminate the 10,000 units that are still not sold. We are finished but not sold. That's why we are using 36. Is that okay? Is that even net contribution? You've been told there are sales, and look at the question. It's not even the contribution. We've been told there are selling and been told that selling and administrative expenses. So we are not yet at the contribution level. Yeah. Our contribution will be now once we left the selling and administrative. This was conc one. So selling and administrative costs are 3 million, out of which 1.2 are fixed. So which are variable? Variable will be 3 million.
2.8.
2.8.
Yes.
2.8 or 1.8? 3 million
1.8
minus
minus
1.2.
1.8.
We just write it there. So it's 1.8. So 1,800. So can we now get the contribution? So this will now be the net contribution after we've deducted everything. What is our net contribution? Minus